This episode's topic is consumerism and its relation to technological progress, as well as economic growth. Now, market and consumptionist fanboys, I mean, I do appreciate the market, but not like a blind fanboy does. Will have you believe that things like consumptionism, just outright consumption at any cost, and economic growth at any cost are the engines of technological progress. This is blasphemy. Okay, blasphemy. It's complete misunderstanding of economics. The engine of technological progress is proper resources and culture geared toward manufacturing technological progress. Now, it's easy to misunderstand. It's an issue of correlation versus causation, which is why it's very easily misunderstood that things like consumptionism or consumerism and economic growth create technological progress. So let's get into a little bit of the history of that. The main thing that really fueled the Industrial Revolution was consumption. It was the main, I want to say it's the main motivation, would be the best way to put it. But in the background, there was still a scientific culture developing. And consumerism greatly helped motivate this. So this is a good point to state that, yes, consumerism is definitely or I should just say consumption is definitely can be a motivation for technological progress. There's no arguing that. But it's one of many potential motivations. That's what needs to be separated. People consuming things is not the actual engine. It's not the actual root cause. It's a similar thing when people say, well, war, yeah, it's bad. It seems bad, but it creates technological progress. Well, war is just like consumption. It's a motivation to create technology, but behind that is still some sort of industrial culture, scientific culture, etc., and infrastructure as well behind that. That is a very important distinction. So when we look at, people wanted all these new products, and even before that they wanted, all trade that's coming from India and everything like that, and that motivated people to develop more technology. But again, there was something behind that want. I mean, you can want all you want, but if you don't have any kind of industrial or scientific infrastructure behind that want and desire, it's not going to happen. So you need something behind that, and there was definitely at that time in Europe was definitely a scientific and industrial culture brewing. So let's think about some other motivations. Just a few. I'm not going to get to them all. But for instance, motivations. Obviously, yes, consuming is going to be a motivation to develop better technology. We want better stuff. We're going to develop more technology. We want to enjoy life more. That's completely reasonable. Of course, we have gone to the point where we've crossed the line of acceptability by thousands of miles. But yes, that can be a reasonable motivation. As well, war and the threat of war are definitely motivations to develop more technology. And the other big ones are simply a culture that is socially engineered to be interested in science or industry or anything like that. That will motivate people. That people will take that on as their interest, so they'll get into that not only as just hobbies but as careers, stuff like that. And you can name several other motivations, but the big one you really want is people being interested in people being interested in it, and then also having an infrastructure to support that interest, and then grow it from there. So when you get to the point, yeah, obviously you want some reasonable level of consumption, and you want to defend your land, but you have to be reasonable about it, which again is another, we've crossed that line of acceptability by thousands of miles. Obviously that stuff is okay within reason. But you can have the same technological progress with limited consumption and limited defense spending, as long as it's managed properly. And not only can you get the same amount of technological progress, but you can waste less resources, and you can dumb people down a lot less. You don't even have to dumb people down, which is what they do to manipulate everyone into this. You don't have to dumb people down to achieve those goals. But especially, the waste of resources is a big one. That's one thing I like to judge civilizations on, is how much technological progress can they create compared to how many resources they use up. The ratio, the technological progress to resource usage ratio, very important metric, which is pretty much ignored by all the experts that I've ever come across anyway. So that's a little introduction to that. And the other thing is economic growth. It's the same. It's a similar thought process. So, yeah, as your economy gets bigger, obviously that increases the chance for technological development. But you can have a smaller economy that's more efficient than a bigger economy in the field of science and industry that will either equal that bigger. The smaller one may equal or even outperform that bigger economy. So by default, if your economy is, say, like 50% consumption, I mean, these aren't real numbers, but just imagine this: 50% consumption, 25% war, and 25% science-based, and you have a really big country that keeps on expanding and has room to expand and all that, and you compare that to a country half the size that puts a much greater percentage into science, yeah, that smaller country is going to be able to perform just as well, assuming they have, similar histories and cultural backgrounds for technological development. So it's a pretty simple concept. So again, correlation versus causation, it's important to understand the difference. You have to understand the real engines behind that actually create technological progress, and that is industry, scientific community, scientific infrastructure, industrial culture and infrastructure. I just want to specify that. Very important. Things like that, and obviously natural resources. And that can be contrasted, or not contrasted, that can be motivated by the various things we discussed and other motivations.